Welcome back to the High Growth Podcast, where cannabis founders and industry insiders tell all. I'm Chelsea, your host today, along with my colleague Dustin, and we are here with Matt Myers and Lou Gianotti from the Pennsylvania Institute of Technology. Matt Myers is president of the Pennsylvania Institute of Technology, where he leads workforce-focused higher education initiatives, including the development of academically rigorous cannabis studies programs aligned with healthcare, regulation, and emerging industry needs. Lou Gianotti is Director of Cannabis Studies at the Pennsylvania Institute of Technology and a licensed pharmacist, bringing a science-based, compliance-driven perspective to cannabis education and workforce development. Welcome, gentlemen. We are so excited to have you both. How's it going?
Great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Nice. What's the weather like in Pennsylvania in January? Is spring here
It's been
yet?
snowing. No,
Snow.
we've got some real snow right now. Yeah.
Nice. We're here in Tempe, Arizona. It's probably like in the 60s today. Spring is on its way. So we
We're
like to
jealous, but we're not jealous during the summer.
don't be. Now is the time to come visit. So next time we'll do this in person. You guys can come on out. It'll be great. Can enjoy the desert spring in January. So the first thing we like to hear about is your origin story and kind of what led you to the cannabis industry.
I'd like to tell you that Lou and I were the ones who led us here, but neither one of us really was. Lou got us to where we are, no doubt, but our former president, a gentleman by the name of Will Robinson, who had recently read a book about the blue sky theory of what's out there that nobody else can do. Lou was a businessman first and a cannabis aficionado second, maybe third. But he basically looked at the market saying, we're a college who's focused historically on what are those career-focused areas where we can get students working quickly in positions making gainful employment and gainful wage for their family. And through his initiative, he went out there and he met a guy named Lou Gianotti, and I think Lou could probably pick it up from there.
Yeah, at the time, I was currently working for a cannabis company. They were involved in Pennsylvania. They had what was called a vertical license, meaning they had a license to grow marijuana. They had a facility out in the western part of the state, 110,000 square foot facility. So they were serious grower, serious supplier of marijuana. The next part of this vertical license, there's three parts. They had a license to process, meaning they could extract the oil from the plant. That's the active ingredients. The plant is just biomass. They could extract the oil and then make things. They can make anything from vape carts to various concentrates to tinctures and different lotions and things like that. And they sold to all dispensaries in the state, not just that they didn't just apply their own. And then my third part of that license was to operate, each license gave you the ability to operate 3 dispensaries. And I was more involved at the dispensary level, getting them licensed, getting them approved by the state, working with contractors, the build out, hiring employees, training employees, marketing the business, and then repeat. We had 3 the dispensaries to open. I opened 3 in southeastern Pennsylvania. 3 we opened up over the course of about 5 months or so. In that time, they also received another license in Pennsylvania. Out in the Pittsburgh area, I was out in Pittsburgh doing some scouting out there for locations. And I got a call, actually, when I was in Pennsylvania, I got a call from Will Robinson from PIT, asked if I would be interested in talking to them about a program they were considering starting. I said yes. I went in for an interview and then basically got the cannabis studies program rolling. At that point, I love retail, love business. Most of my career, either in pharmacy or pharmacy was always at the retail level. I like retail, but I like cannabis education a little bit better. It kind of goes back to my pharmacist roots on how it works medically. Always curious. Since since a teenager. I won't go into too many details. I don't want anybody to, go back and, look at my storied past. And always had an interest in education. I felt that when I was working in the industry, there was a need for people who understood their product they were selling better. And that's kind of sums up where I am now.
Wow. In what year did Pitt start the program?
May will be coming on 7 years, Matt. Can you believe it?
Yeah,
Okay.
we like to say that we were the first regionally accredited, meaning you can transfer your credits, college offering a degree in cannabis, and nobody's corrected me yet, so I'm sticking with that story.
And so what's the specific degree?
We have three.
Okay.
We have a cannabis business associate's degree, 2-year program. We have a cannabis health associate's degree. We have a cannabis horticulture associate's degree. And just last July of 2025, we added a cannabis business bachelor's degree. And considering other programs as well at this point.
That's awesome. Do you guys have any? I'm always just curious on the stats. Do you guys have any numbers like about how many graduates you've had in total from your program so far?
Geez, man, I don't know, 60, 70, 80?
I would say between about 60 and 80. Right now, we have just under 90 enrolled. And what's interesting is pre-pandemic. So if you think about, like Lou said, the program's been around about 7 years. So right around the pandemic, did it launch? Pre-pandemic, we had students in 3 states. Last year, we had students in 28 different states. And cannabis has obviously been a huge driver in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next question we like to ask is, you sort of already answered possibly, but what do you guys offer that nobody else does?
I think there are a couple novel approaches that we have. One is that Lou and his team have really embraced is we call it Flex Pit or Flex PIT, where Lou and his faculty members, especially with horticulture, have a unique model where it's fully online, it can be in class, or it can be what we call asynchronous. So you're learning at your own pace. So Lou and his team will actually, even when it comes to, like I said, the horticulture, the growing, they have technology to show students what they're doing. If a student lives locally and is struggling a little bit or wants to just have that in-class experience, they can come in, watch that lecture live. It's also recorded for students to be able to see it live. Or if a lot of our students, this is a new career, this is them going into a new place, a new space in their career, and they'll do it asynchronously, where they'll take it at night, the recorded version. But they also know that depending on their hours, they have that flexibility. So I think that's really unique within the space to be able to offer that fully online and that kind of flexibility. And also, what we have still seen is that state colleges, whether it be community colleges or just your general state colleges, are not really going to touch this space too much. And when they do, it's more on the research level. So the ability for students, for instance, with the cannabis horticulture or the cannabis health therapies, which we don't have a bachelor's option in, or even the bachelor's in business, the ability for students to transfer those credits and earn a further degree, which a lot of the online education models that are out there that were kind of there when we started, and I'm not gonna name names, but you're not earning real college credits. You're earning hopefully you're learning things, but it's not something you can build on, and it doesn't have that same level of legitimacy within the workforce.
Cool. So one of the first, possibly the first cannabis programs in the country, flexible learning and pacing for those programs. What's been your guys' favorite part of being at this sort of like precipice of this new industry and being able to put this type of programming out? What's your favorite part so far?
Jump in real quick, Chelsea, and then turn it to Lou, because my favorite part has been watching Lou and his team grow. The fact that, when Lou came in, there were no textbooks, and Lou had to write the book. And we joke as a small college that, we have people who come in and you can follow directions, and a lot of faculty, it'll be here's your syllabus, here's your curriculum, here's your textbook, go follow it. Lou didn't have that luxury to be able to do that. So hopefully a perfect segue to you, Lou, and explaining how you got there.
It is, because the best part of the job for me is overcoming the stigma that exists. I mean, there's some people just hate marijuana because they don't know why, but they just don't like it. They're told not to like it, they don't like it.
Like Shaggy and Scooby-Doo, they're just against the whole vibe of it.
Yeah. But the students come in and they're kind of a victim of stigma, perhaps a victim of misinformation. A lot of them come in with information from their older brothers, their neighbors, maybe a little bit of Reddit. No disrespect to Reddit, I love it, but they have some misconceptions about marijuana that are shared widely. And then for me, the best part is to take them when they first start with some, again, those misconceptions. And when they graduate, they really, truly become specialists in marijuana. They know the strains, they know how to recommend strains appropriately, whether it's for treating arthritis symptoms or what's the best strain to go bowling with. They know the plant, they know how it should be used, they know the history, they know the politics. They're able to address some of those questions, misinformed questions that they may be receiving from, relatives around the Thanksgiving dinner table. So for me, that's the greatest. When they walk in graduation, you see that they're confident. You see that they're good advocates for our school. They're good advocates for the science of marijuana, which has been, 5,000-year history of using marijuana medically. The United States certainly has a problem for the last 88 years, but they understand it. They understand it better. And for me,
Yeah, just thinking about your pharmacy and kind of retail background, right? And the current dispensary experience. So here in Arizona, we have, we started with medical, and we had medical for several years before it moved to recreation. But just kind of curious to hear, how do you think that you would change? Maybe it's that dispensary experience. So you're mentioning like them being able to actually like educate and recommend strains and like talk to you about things in this different way. So if you could kind of like wave your magic wand, what do you imagine that ideal experience is like for somebody looking to use cannabis for the first time?
Well, the first thing our students should learn is when perhaps they're working in a dispensary, is to listen. And the same skills apply to a pharmacist as any healthcare professional. You ask the question, what is it you're here for? Not what are you here for? That's obvious. But what is it you're looking to achieve here? I mean, are you looking for various strains, for, as I mentioned, for various ailments, for recreational use or adult use? You have to ask the question, and you have to listen to the answer. The frustrating thing that I think that occurs in dispensaries now is people come in and they'll ask, like, what's the strongest stuff you got for the cheapest amount of money? And right, a good bud tender will say, it's not just about the percentage of THC. There's other things that influence this strain, this particular plant, that will provide a different experience. And then through conversation, through education from the dispensary worker to the customer, the knowledge spreads. And it's not about, hey, I'm looking for fire. I'm looking for something to help me relax at night. I'm looking for something to relieve some anxiety. I'm looking for something just, on the weekends, just to watch a movie. Or I'm looking for something, I suffer from chronic migraines, and I'm looking for something to help there. It's that part of the business, and again, I tie in a similarity between the working in a pharmacy. When people say, what do you recommend for a cough? First question is, well, who's it for? And then kind of work from there. So it's that skill set, I feel, that our students leave with, and then bring to the industry.
Yeah, and really, that first point of contact is typically the bud tender or whoever's kind of working at the counter that you walk up to, right? So I can imagine if more people had that type of, education and an approach to that first touch of the experience, how that might change kind of what they think about and how they experience that. You guys have a master class out or anything? I see a bud tender master class in your future.
There's quite a bit of those programs online.
Okay.
There's a pre-recorded kind of modular type things, and there's some really good ones out there. And I tell students, our prospective students, if you want to work in the industry, perhaps as a bud tender, and I love bud tenders, believe me, they make the world go round. Our program might be a bit much for that. I don't know whether you need our program for that. But if you're looking to advance in the industry, and Matt said early in this conversation, if you're looking to make a career out of cannabis, we're here for you for that. Do you have to get a degree in banking from Harvard to be a bank teller? No. But you know what I'm saying? We provide perhaps
a pathway to,
information to the more serious student. People are more
yeah,
serious.
absolutely.
And from my perspective, the students in the last few years have changed too. When we first launched the program, I don't mean to stereotype, but yeah, we saw those students. Which one is going to get me the greatest high? I want to learn more about what I'm doing in my basement. And the students have definitely changed. They've gotten older. Our traditional student at our college is about 28, 29 years old, and I don't think that's much different in the cannabis program than some others. And you know, these are people. We've had corrections officers, police officers, I think, Lou, we had a CPA. Yeah. I mean, the type of student has changed into both the one who is looking for opportunity and the one who has usually come in some kind of contact with cannabis in their life, which is not that different than when we used to have a physical therapy program. You'd have people who had an injury, and that's what got them interested. We have a lot of the same with cannabis, where, you know, I saw it really helped my mom's got glaucoma, and now I want to learn more about it. So the seriousness of the student, to Lou's point about the kind of programming and the vertical growth within the industry, because you look at it and you say, hey, cannabis has, from my perspective, when we launched this program, I was in the de facto marketing person. Very challenging environment as far as regulation, and still is, with Google advertising and things like that, and what imagery and what verbiage you can use. It just, we've seen a shift, but there's still restrictions with those things. The banking industry that ultimately people who are really serious about it and want to make a difference within the space, they have to learn those ins and outs to be successful. The students Lou has, some of them want to be a master bud tender, a sommelier of bud tenders, but some of them want to own marketing firms, and some of them want to open their own dispensaries. These are serious professionals who are looking for the credentials they need to be able to go to the bank and say, provide me a loan.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. I think that's what propels the business forward, is that education that you're providing for all of the nuance. So the face of the cannabis consumer, and then therefore the folks that are getting engaged in wanting to learn more, or, you know, make a go at the business end of it, is a reflection now of any industry. It's the same as any industry. From what we saw at MJ BizCon, you've got some of the usual suspects, right, who are legacy cannabis industry folks, but then you've got everyone else that is just, as it could be any industry when you're there, just the product happens to be cannabis. And the challenge with cannabis is what you said. I think that's what's great about what you do. You have to understand it's not as easy as opening up a burger shop. While a burger shop in and of itself could be very similar to running a cannabis business, from a business standpoint, there's so much nuance, regulatory hurdles, things you have to know about to be successful, or else it could really hurt your business. And we've been there. We had a wellness business for a moment right before COVID, which had CBD. But because of CBD, banking shut us down very quickly. It's like, well, wait a minute, you know, and had we had the education or the awareness that education existed for us before going into that model, we might not have had to have all of those struggles. So I think that's exciting that you guys offer that, and getting that awareness out there is what I'm interested in. So how do you guys make your program widely available and sort of, you know, from the rooftops? How are you getting that word out that this is something we can help you with?
Yeah, how are you guys growing your student base and kind of getting it out there?
Can we go back a minute to something that Matt had said, and Dustin, you touched upon it, regarding a sommelier and a wine.
Yeah.
When students are asking me before they enroll, or even while they're a student, what do I do with this degree? You have to think of the wine industry, what goes into the wine industry. You're a winemaker, you're going to pick a particular strain of grape to grow. You're going to pick a particular strain of marijuana to grow. You're going to say, well, I'm going to grow white wine. I'm going to grow a dry white wine, whatever it may be. So now you're considering the climate where you're growing the grape, the soil, when it's being harvested, the timing of the harvest, how it's being aged, how it's then being fermented. I don't need to stop and draw the similarities with weed right along. But, and then at some point, you've got to work with your marketing team, the shape of the bottle, the type of the label, how it's being sold, and then you need a sales force to sell it to restaurants and to wine shops. And you're going to meet with the sommelier. Hey, I have a great, you're a seafood restaurant. I have a wine that's just going to go terrific with your menu. So it's getting it from, and in marijuana, it's called seed to sale, which the federal government requires of states to make sure that the product isn't being diverted for illegal use of gang violent weapons, whatever. But again, in the wine industry, that's seed to sale, the same thing. Although it ends up in a wine shop or a restaurant, but marijuana ends up in a dispensary. But it is very similar. I just wanted to touch on that because Matt kind of sparked my memory on how I explain the business model for marijuana that sort of exists today, but needs a little more tweaking. But anyway, I'm sorry, Chelsea.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, and
subject,
everybody.
But I wanted to go back to that.
One thing we noticed, and you sort of subtly touched on it, was that everybody who we've met and who we met at MJ BizCon, cannabis wasn't their entry point. Their business existed in other industries already, and then they brought it to cannabis. So that kind of struck me as something maybe unique from other industries or spaces, is that these things already existed. They didn't start in cannabis. Specifically, all of the businesses like around it versus like somebody who's growing, right?
Exactly.
So that was
labs, packaging, all these folks.
They were already a lab. They were already a packaging company. They're already in marketing. They're already in banking. And then they made the decision to enter the industry, much like, you know, you're the founder of your program, right? That kind of drove you guys to now put Pitt right into that space of being really unique and to helping this industry really grow because they were passionate and really cared a lot about the product and getting it into the hands of people to help them. So definitely
it's interesting. Yeah, no, it's interesting, Chelsea, that you say that because during the pandemic, I met with Lou and a bunch of his students at a farm in northern Maryland, right, Lou? And it was a law. I mean, we're talking. I didn't even realize you could have greenhouses that you needed scooters to get around in. I believe that they had mentioned they were the largest distributor of poinsettias in the Northeast for Walmart. Well, you can just imagine the scale. Well, during the off season, what per cubic yard has the greatest revenue? I mean, these are the ways they're doing it, and what can grow within their structure of their greenhouses. You know what? They're growing hemp for CBD, and you go, these guys are already experts before they entered the industry.
So, kind of where we were headed to was the question on growth for your program. You know, I see ads for like University of Phoenix online, this, that, and the other. I'm getting blitzed all the time. Get your MBA in this, get your, Six Sigma black belt, get your whatever. And I know that there are the regulatory hurdles around what you can and can't share out there, but how are you guys, whether it's like boots on the ground at the dispensary, put these in your break room, put these flyers for all, like, how are you guys spreading the word and growing your program?
I think that when we again, look back to 7 years ago, it was a very different scenario than it might be today. But I can tell you from its infancy, things like the SEO for Google, like I said, you were really restricted. You couldn't use the word cannabis. You couldn't use marijuana. All of these things would get rejected. And the same with Facebook. And you look at those kinds of ways that we typically advertise, those were cut out for us. So I think there were two things. One was working with Lou and the other people in his department to identify what are the industry, what do people in the industry read? Is it another plug for Reddit? Is it Reddit? Is it High Times? Where can we advertise to get our name out there? As time has gone on, restrictions have decreased a little bit. We've seen a little more flexibility, and we've also learned how to navigate around some of those things, and just know that it's going to take 3 or 4 times to get rejected before something gets up there. And then it also ties into being on the early side of the educational part of this industry, that our biggest programs at our college are health related, nursing. If we went to a nursing conference, nobody knows who we are in Arizona. If Lou goes to a cannabis conference in Arizona, people are going to be familiar with PIT. You start to get a reputation. And the truth of the matter is, for all of our programs, I think 42% of our students hear about us from word of mouth. So what it comes back to, and this is Lou, I mean, we're talking about it within the cannabis industry, but we also look as a college that one of our biggest advantages is we look at ourselves as we're all in customer service. Our students are our customers. If we're not giving them a quality product and quality outcomes, that we're all alluding to, these jobs that we're telling students are there. If they're not getting them, they're not telling their friends to come to PIT. So it is a little bit more guerrilla warfare out there, I would say, when it comes to getting your name out there with cannabis than nursing. But again, we're lucky to have people like Lou who gives us legitimacy. We have another faculty member who is a Cannabis Cup winner in Colorado. Those kinds of things can bring attention, and we can write articles about them without getting into those sorts of trouble. So that's been kind of the approach.
Yeah.
And when you're a small school such as ours, there's a lot of involvement, personal involvement with our students. Number one, it's a unique program and it requires it. But number two, and Matt touched upon it, word of mouth. I mean, every time one of our students works in a dispensary and they may say something and it's overheard by a worker, and they say, well, how did you know that? And then they start to explain, well, I went to PIT and went through their program. Or customers will say in the dispensaries, like, you seem to really know a lot. And some of the customers are also very educated with marijuana. And then, so there's that as well. I look at it like every time we graduate a student, or even our students currently enrolled, they become little recruiters for us. It's up to us to make sure that we're putting out a good product, if we want to call our graduates products, because they are ultimately that's our name. I mean, when you're a small school, that's what you have. I mean, that's what you have to work with. We rely upon our students for forever. Once they enter the program.
I enjoyed their last awards breakfast near graduation. I was seated at a table along with our board chair with one of our co-valedictorians, just happened to be there, who was a cannabis student, and they lived in Pittsburgh, and you're in a large state, so you'll get it. Pittsburgh is about twice as far from us as Manhattan, where our college is. I was sitting with two students who worked at the same cannabis-related employer in Pittsburgh, who had a third who had graduated from PIT and had more that were headed to us. So it really is a lot of that word of mouth.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. So you guys mentioned some of those pain points, but we always like to ask, what's your biggest pain point?
I'll tell you a funny one. We were applying to get a building that the college owned to be consolidated into our campus at the house next door. And we had to go to a number of town council, zoning hearings. And I had a gentleman who lived across the street who said, and again, this was about zoning of resident. I'll tell you, you have a sign and it has a pot leaf on the sign. What am I supposed to tell my 3-year-old? And I did my best to be polite and said, tell them that it's a leaf.
Yeah.
There is still a stigma there. And, like I said, I was in charge of marketing when we first launched the program, and I was concerned at the time of people picketing outside. Who knows what kind of groups are out there? Yeah, it never happened, thankfully. And I figure if it hasn't happened at this point, it probably won't until Lou starts the some sort of edibles program or the magic mushroom program.
I was going to say psychedelics are next, right? That's the natural.
Yeah, we actually have a course, a student request for principles of psychedelics, and it's fascinating. We just added that course last year.
Oh, cool.
We're still making concessions that we're not going to put leaves on sign.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or mushrooms.
Only on pizza.
I think the pain point is, I think it's pretty obvious. It's the illegality. You're still dealing with the dual, maybe not even more than dual rules, federally illegal, but now not quite, it's, you have 50 states, you have 50 laws and regulations. Everyone's different, what you can do, what you can't do. And stigma is always tough. And you have misinformation out there. I mean, you still have, I just read an article just a couple days ago in the Atlantic magazine. There was an article. Should I mention the author? Maybe I should not. I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe
Go for it. Yeah.
Charles Fain Lehman, came out and published an article of why marijuana should not be legal. And it was, when I was reading it, I swore I was listening to Reefer Madness again. The misinformation and it's kind of like, it's just using information, things that are not accurate to, for whatever reason, contribute to that stigma. And then taking it even more seriously, people still get arrested for marijuana, and people are still in jail for marijuana. So here we are in in one state where people are having gummies and going to a concert, and then some people have had their liberty taken from them. So yeah, that's a serious pain point.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
So back to our magic wand question. You can wave your magic wand. What do you hope to see kind of in the future of the industry overall?
Well, I'll start. It's so funny. Well, a lot of what the conversation we're having is, we want legality. We want to see the federal government kind of catch up to the rest of the world here. For me, you want regulation. You want structure, just like the alcohol industry has structure. I mean, you're not buying wine with 85% alcohol. It's stupid. You shouldn't be buying some strains that are just really, from my opinion, my students will certainly disagree with me. Hopefully they don't see the podcast. Some strains are just too strong.
I'm like against this trend of they're like, well, this one has, and they kind of pitch it to you even, right? Like, well, this has 28%. I'm like, that is insane. Like, I do not want that. That is not what I'm asking for.
Yeah. I mean, just about 2 years ago, I mean, a grower out in Chicago hit 40%. 40%. Brownie Scout, the strain was Brownie Scout 40%. And there's no need for it, in my opinion. And I feel that those things not hurt the industry, but perhaps are not good for the industry. So I think there needs to be some.
Like, you could drink Everclear, but like, why?
Yeah. So you have that. I think there needs some regulation. The black market contributes to potentially bad things happening. The black market's unregulated. 50% of all the weed consumed in this country is still black market. And so you have people smoking things that they really don't know where it's from. I mean, it's not going testing, in a state program. They're tested for mold and bacteria and pesticides and things. Fortunately, it's a very safe substance and nobody's dying, but nobody's dying from marijuana or THC. But there could be other things in the plant. It kind of brings it back to alcohol prohibition when people were drinking Jake, J-A-K, the Jamaican ginger alcohol. They developed 30,000 people became paralyzed. They had what was called Jake leg. And it wasn't the alcohol that was hurting them, although it didn't help them much. It was the organophosphates. It was pesticides in the drink that caused paralysis in people. So you start thinking, well, pesticides are strictly controlled in state marijuana programs for obvious reasons I just stated. But is it being used in the black market? We don't know.
You don't know what you're getting.
So for me, for as much as I'm an advocate for marijuana, I'm an advocate for control, and I'm an advocate for oversight because the synthetic marijuanas out there, the K2s and the spices, some of these synthetic cannabinoids that you're seeing, they're flat out dangerous. And if the government really wants to go after a problem with cannabis, go after synthetic cannabinoids. Leave the plant alone. Plant's not hurting anybody. So.
Right.
What about you, Matt?
I think quite similar to Lou that we not only the safety, but we're in a situation where you have, like I said, maybe this is back to a pain point. 28 different states we have students, and that means 28 different state regulations potentially.
They seem to be like learning from each other, or like taking things like, okay, this worked really well in Arizona, or this is how we should do this in Minnesota, or New York did this. It's all very different.
It's all very different. And I look at it we're in Pennsylvania, obviously, and we're Pennsylvania when it comes, and we make these analogies to alcohol. We have state stores. Our state is the only people who can sell alcohol. Right. We don't have that privately held. I don't care. That doesn't matter because, again, the wine, the alcohol, all has its different regulation. That how you distribute it, fine, but how it gets to the distributor or the counter, that's what's going to make a difference. It's scary. We have right down the street from us a kratom dispensary, completely legal. How many people are going to die from that versus even that 40% THC that Lou referenced?
Yeah,
and that is completely unregulated. That needs to change.
I always joke to my students, nobody's overdosed on marijuana. People have tried. Every day. Somebody else.
Oh, maybe this is for a later conversation, but we came across a really cool product this year called Undo. Have you guys heard of it?
I have.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a little shout out to Undo. They have 3 different kind of formulations of their product that you can take to curb the effects of marijuana, and how if you don't want that feeling anymore and you're like, oh no, I used too much and I don't like this feeling anymore, to kind of take you down from that, as well as like a reset button. So very interesting, very cool things happening.
I get a call from, let's say, a board member on a Sunday afternoon. How do you spell this product? No.
Undo, right? You're like, oh, I just got called into work, but it's
Yeah.
UNDOO. It's two O's.
But all of that leads back to, because I'm in full agreement on the regulatory framework for all things associated with this, right? Even an undo product, because there's a lot of snake oil out there, and not saying anything about undo, but there's no testing for the things that say they do what they do, right? Within the industry. So cannabis itself, for sure, right? Needs from seed to sale. What is that provenance and all of the things that say this is what it says it is, and this is how we know that. So when you consume it, you can feel safe. And I think it goes with those peripheral products, as well as those very risky things like that kratom and 7-OH and synthetic opioids. Like, God, those are dangerous. And they fly under the radar for so long until the FDA gets involved, and there you go, right? So it's like, get ahead of the regulatory framework and ensure that we're all on the same page so we can keep the industry growing safely. Yeah, and we hear that virtually every conversation we have, that support of safe regulation while allowing the industry to still flourish in a way that it is, versus being overtaken by big pharma or something along those lines, right? It's really a fine balance that requires. We were talking to a lobbyist in a state that is responsible for legalization and going through all of that process. Big player in that game of government bureaucracy to make this happen, and that's a lot of work. So we'll see how that goes, but I couldn't agree more on that hope.
Yeah, more work to be done, but a lot of it just comes down to misinformation. We'll have
for
to,
sure.
Got to spread the knowledge,
right? And all of the data, right, that's behind it to show. So really cool programs that you guys have. Is there anything you kind of want to, one last thing, anything you want to shout out or leave the audience with?
Words of wisdom. Yeah.
I'll throw out mine so Lou can give the real words of wisdom, but we still get some of the negative stigma online. The online trolls that are out there that say, hey, I've been in this business since 1973. I should be teaching your courses. Needless to say, I don't know that I agree, but I always use the analogy of, look at the 70s and 60s with computer science. You couldn't get a computer science degree. Now until recently, try to get a job without one. The work that Lou and his staff are doing is training people for really a brand new industry. And it's hard for me to imagine that 20 years from now, as we're just seeing more and more, while it's not as fast as we might like, while we're seeing more and more of change when it comes to regulation and what's permissible on the state level, that you're going to see change within the educational framework, and that you are going to see state colleges eventually, as the states embrace it, opening up to opportunities for employment. I mean, we're surrounded by states where adult use or recreational use is legal. At what point are our legislators going to wake up and say, for who, for what? Why are we not at least expanding our tax revenue, if no other reason? The story of the moral high ground is just silly at this point.
The reasons for marijuana being illegal are just, some of them are just plain old just silly. And I always say it's a very disruptive plant. Back in the early 1900s, it was everywhere. It was used everywhere. It was over the counter. You used it for teething babies. You used it for seniors that perhaps wanted something for their rheumatitis. It was as common as acetaminophen is now, with various cold products, and it was so common then. But it was a disruptive product. The pharmaceutical industry wasn't real crazy about it, and the alcohol industry wasn't real crazy about it, and the paper mills were not so crazy about it. An acre of hemp can produce as much paper as 4 acres of trees. Henry Ford once had a car that the side panels were made of hemp fiber, and it ran on hemp oil, like right now we run on French fry oil, biodiesel. So, if you were a Rockefeller at the time, selling 80% of the nation's gasoline, you were not liking hemp. If you were DuPont and you were selling nylon rope, you weren't liking hemp. So there a lot of business came in, and they went after perhaps the euphoric properties of the plant. They went after some of the they went after people's culture, who used marijuana, just like alcohol prohibition was going after the Europeans' culture. It's a disruptive plant. I could go on and on. I mean, Matt's probably like, oh, don't start a lecture, Lou. But the history and the reasons of the illegality it's silly. It's about money, and you're starting to see things kind of maybe certainly swinging back the other day. I was a teenager in the '70s, so back then, God forbid, I mean, it really was the devil's lettuce then, and now, not so much now.
Yeah, it's almost, I don't know, boring in some senses. Like, okay, whatever. It's become pedestrian in a lot of areas that are highly saturated, where I think that generational shift too, right? It's almost like the wealth transition. As people start transitioning their wealth is a nice way of saying that they've passed away. They move on to different styles of banking, as an analogy, right? The brick and mortar, like, who goes to a bank? When was the last time you've been to a bank? Why would you go into a building? And so that sort of evolution of just cultural thought around the idea, and I think it's the same as what I'm seeing as that generational shift moves forward, and it's been around in the sense that it has now for 20 years and beyond. It'll be like, it's just is what it is. So the government needs to catch up. But I do see all those stigmas out there still as that generation starts to shift towards it being boring. Like, that's just normal. So yeah, weed is boring. That should be a t-shirt. It's very disruptive. No doubt. I guess that's maybe what I see it becoming, right? In certain circles, it already is. But yeah, certainly causing major disruption still. Money, it all boils down to money, like you said, Lou. I agree with that.
Yep.
Dustin, I remember when I turned 21 and my dad says to me, so drinking isn't as fun as it was a year ago, is it?
Yeah.
What? No, it really isn't.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Exactly. Now that I can, it's like, okay, yeah. I can. Cool. Yeah, perfect.
So thank you guys so much for being a part of the High Growth Podcast. To all of our listeners, everybody checking this out, if you want to achieve high growth and take your career to the next level, consider starting with the founders of the first program at a state college, Pennsylvania Institute of Technology, Pitt. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you both.